but this thing's running well. The tracks are definitely not spinning. So there's something going on there. But I do think hopefully this is the problem. I see a bunch of crap, like someone made a nest underneath where the transmission is right here. Alright, I'm going to take this belly pan off. It looks like a bunch of, maybe, these look like 10 millimeter bolts. Looks like we're missing one up here. It might even be, those are 12s, these are 10s. Okay, pull those together. Let's see what we got going on under here. Ho! All right. Well, I think I'm going to put a mask on and I'm going to try and clean up all this crap. I think I'm just going to shop vac it out of here. Wow, that's a nice sized nest. Hopefully nobody's in there still. Alright, so I've cleaned out this as best I can. Well, maybe not. Didn't realize there was more junk in here. But anyways, it is way cleaner in here now. And I think we can all decide exactly why this thing will not roll forward or backwards. There's supposed to be rubber on the end of this friction disc or wheel. Okay, so this thing's supposed to slide on this guy right here. All right, this is moving when we engage the lever up top there. It actually brings those two pieces together, and then it's going to drive the wheels forwards and backwards. Okay, as you can see. So that part of it seems to work. It's just there's no rubber on this disc to be able to make that connection there. What I've got here is a new friction wheel, and they actually do still manufacture friction wheels for these Honda HS50, 55, 70, 80s. I was pretty surprised, but there's the part number for that. Alright guys, so before I flip this up on its service position, which is on the lid there, what I'm going to do, first of all, is on this particular machine, and also applicable again to the HS50, 55, 70, and this one in the 80, there is a shaft bolt that has to line up with this sort of service hole right there. That's a 10 millimeter on this one, and I believe it's 12 millimeter on some of the other ones based on my research. We will have to actually take that bolt out to be able to loosen the shaft enough to be able to slide the friction wheel or friction disc off. So to do that, you actually have to put the height adjustment down so that lines up. You have to put the height adjustment, I think it said in the lowest position. I think that's the highest position, so I got to go no, I guess they meant the highest position for the bucket to be off the ground. So now you can see that lines up. So that's the first step. Next step, I'm going to put it up on its lid. So it's up in its service position now. So first thing we're going to do is on the left side, there is like a sort of a rubber boot sort of dust cap that we're going to have to take off. Probably just use some sort of a, I don't know, paint scraper or something with a wide blade to try and get that off. And also on the other side, of course, there is that, on this one, 10 millimeter bolt. So I'll be taking those two things off next. What I'll do is get a pair of vice grips here, and I'm gonna have to put it on the shaft here. I don't want to I don't want to wreck the spline of the shaft. It's a sort of a splined shaft, so I'm just going to put a piece of rag around that. So hopefully I don't wreck that. I'm also going to need to do this anyways, because to get these bolts off of the friction disc, it is going to have to not spin either. So let's see what we get here now. Alright, so that's good. That came right off. And then on the other side, just gonna get my putty knife in there and okay, that actually with mine was in pretty decent shape. It's actually quite pliable. There's a little bit of like old grease in there, looks like. Alright, so on this side where I removed the rubber boot, you can basically just see the splined shaft. There's no retaining bolt on this side. So from here, what I'm going to do next is to try and remove these. They look like 10mm bolts off of the old friction disc. All right, so I'm going to put some penetrating I don't know if that's gonna work, but okay. So that's one. Wow. Pretty impressed for the amount of rust that's on here. These things are actually gonna come out. So guys, hopefully this video is going to help somebody. I searched on YouTube there, just trying to find somebody else doing a friction disc replacement on one of these older Hondas, and I could not find a video. So that's why I'm kind of making this video, trying to help some other people out as well. So there is a snap ring, if you can see that right here, which I'm probably going to try and move over this way a little bit so that I can push this shaft that way and make some space over on this side, just enough space to be able to slide this guy off. So we're gonna see how this works out. All right, so I finally got that snap ring moved over a few inches, so we should be able to hopefully just sort of move this shaft far enough this way that we can slide this off just like that. So alright, that seems to be working. Just need a little persuasion. So now you can see I got quite a bit more space over there. We'll see if this thing will actually just slide right off now. Oh, I didn't want to do that, but that's okay. And there we go. Easy enough. So let's compare the two side by side. Make sure, first of all, the holes line up, which they do. And as you can see, the new one comes with a rubber. That's what causes the friction between this friction plate, which is spinning with the engine, and the wheel. So before I put this back together, since it's a little bit open here, I'm going to actually try and clean up this friction wheel. Alright, now clean this off and just use a little bit of gasoline on a rag here. And it looks way better. Alright, now to put it back on, and just the reverse of how it came off, of course. Put that guy on first. And I'm going to try and slide the shaft back through. There we go. Actually, pretty easy there. Get my 3 bolts. Line up the holes, of course. Alright, so let me show you what I'm finding out here. This friction wheel here is just sitting up a little bit too high to be able to line up the holes. Just not giving me enough space with the rubber now on this friction disc. So it just won't line up. So what I found is to get this actually to rotate downwards a little bit. What you need to do is to push up on this whole arm assembly here. And you can see how that kind of, it's hard to tell on the camera, but it is rotating that disc. And the only thing that's holding this arm sort of back this way and preventing us from moving this disc up is this spring. So get yourself a, I don't know, pair of needle nose pliers or whatever. Make sure you got some glasses on anytime you're working with springs. Just try and pull that spring out there. And then that's going to give us enough room to be able to push this lever all the way forward. It'll drop down our friction wheel, and I can put my friction disc on here now, and it lines up with the hub. I just have to line up the holes, and I'll be able to put the bolts back in. There we go. Beauty. There we go. Springs back in place. Now, this shouldn't be rubbing right up against this guy here. Alright guys, so I had to spend maybe 20 minutes to try and figure out this Honda engineering. They tend to over-engineer everything, but they do make good products, so they last forever, obviously. Not forever, but they last a long time if you take good care of them. I had to try and figure out what was going on with this whole assembly here and try and figure out why there was no space in between the disc and the wheel, the friction disc and the friction wheel. Because in a neutral position, this should not be engaged. It should not be touching at all, right? Like it is right now. So previously it was touching at all times, even in the neutral position. So that's not what we want. So I had to try and figure out what was going on with the handle. So it's hard to tell. I'll try and go from the bottom side here, but in this neutral position, which is basically over to the left side, so anything up and down along that left edge there is going to be a neutral position. Okay, so in a neutral position, what we need to have is what I figured out is I needed to have this cable tight. It had to get pulled upwards this way. Which when I pull this cable tight and have it going up this way, that actually creates the space that we needed. It actually draws this disc down a little bit through this mechanism, this arm. All right, it actually applies when I have that cable pulled all the way up this way. It pulls this arm it pulls this arm and rotates this shaft, which then this is directly linked. The wheel is directly linked to this shaft here. So it rotates kind of up and down like this a little bit with that tension on that cable, which pulls this arm. Okay, so what I needed to do is increase the tension on that cable so that it would pull this down while it was in the neutral position. So to do that, I actually had to adjust this cable right here, which is the one I was talking about, to put more tension on it. So I had to actually pull this off, and I actually loosened these two bolts, or these nuts I should say, and then I pulled the whole assembly off, and then these nuts were actually further down on this shaft. So what I ended up doing is I drove them this way, which actually puts more tension on that cable when it's in a neutral position, and therefore that's the adjustment I needed to make to get this thing to not be engaged all the time. So if you're having this problem, that's the cable you want to be adjusting right there. I think I'm just about ready to button it up now. And what I'm going to do actually is just one last time, just run some rag with some gasoline on the disc and the wheel, because I don't want to have any grease on any of either of those mating surfaces. But before I do that, I'm probably going to grease up this shaft a little bit, just with some low temp grease, and then clean all that up. And then I'll put the pan back on, I'll flip it back over, and we'll be ready to test drive this thing finally. Alright, so she's plugged in. There's no prime, fuel's on, choke is on, throttle is up. And let's see what happens. Ignition switch on. I mean, this thing runs like a top. All the gears are working now. Super stoked about this. Hopefully you guys enjoyed me wrenching on this thing, and if you got one of these old bad boys, then maybe it's going to help you out. So thanks again for joining me, and until our next project, take care.